Right in the middle of a crowded conference room, I heard my son's father-in-law, Randall Pierce, shout straight into his face, "This kid can't even hold a damn mop the right way. Useless. Absolutely useless." People burst out laughing. I froze at the doorway, staring at my son, Noah, kneeling on the floor, his hands trembling as he wiped up the coffee Randall had deliberately tossed just to teach him a lesson. Noah saw me. His face flushed a deep, painful red. I wanted to run in and pull him away, but I stayed still. And in those few seconds, I understood. If I reacted now, they would crush him even further. So I swallowed my anger and turned away. And in that very moment, I decided I would make them pay for what they did, but in a way they would never see coming. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like so it can reach even further. I walked out of the Pierce manufacturing building, my hands clenched so tightly the knuckles turned white. The North Carolina air that day was colder than usual for December, but the chill of the wind was nothing compared to the cold running down my spine after watching my son treated like cheap labor in front of a room full of people. I, Margaret Maggie Turner, 66 years old, never imagined I would have to see Noah in such a state, especially after the years I spent pouring every ounce of strength I had into raising and protecting him. I remembered standing there, watching my only son in that wide conference room, the walls lined with oversized posters about the company's vision and mission. Ironically, beneath those shiny slogans, my son was kneeling on the floor like an untrained janitor, scrubbing spilled coffee. I already knew Noah hadn't been given the management position he was originally promised, but I never expected they would treat him this horribly. I can still see the moment Noah's eyes met mine by accident. The hurt in them pierced straight through my chest. I'd seen him fall off his bike, seen him get injured, seen him cry over his first heartbreak, but never had I seen humiliation in his eyes this deep. It was as if he was silently saying, "Mom, I'm sorry you have to see me like this." I wanted to tell him he had nothing to apologize for, that the only wrongdoers were the people trampling him to feed their own swollen egos, but I couldn't do anything from the hallway. Any reaction from me would give Randall another excuse to shame Noah. So I turned my back and walked away, but I swear that was the last time in my life I would ever walk away from my son in a moment like that. When I got home, I opened the lunch I had brought for Noah, a box of Southern-style barbecue rice, the family recipe he'd loved since he was little. I thought it would make his first day a little easier. I had woken up at 6 a.m., prepared everything with care. I wanted him to have a real lunch, not some rushed fast food at the office. I had imagined him walking into Randall's company with confidence, being respected, being recognized for who he was. But what I saw was the opposite of everything I had hoped. I set the lunchbox on the kitchen counter and sat there for a long time. My house in Raleigh had always felt warm, filled with the scent of old wood and family photos lining the walls. But that day, the whole place felt dark. I could hear my heartbeat, slow, angry, heavy. At 66, I lived alone, used to the silence of a house no longer filled with the footsteps of a little boy running around. But today, the silence roared like a scream. I thought about all the years I raised Noah on my own. My husband left when Noah was 4. I worked 3 jobs, waitressing at a diner, cleaning hotel rooms, and doing temp work in a warehouse just to provide for him. I used to come home close to midnight, hands numb, back aching so badly I cried. But the moment I saw Noah asleep, hugging his worn-out teddy bear, everything felt worth it. Noah never disappointed me. He was hard-working, gentle, polite, always saying please and thank you to everyone he met. When he got into the University of North Carolina, I cried in the middle of the campus because I was so proud, and now those people dared call my son useless. No, I would not accept that. That evening, I called Noah again and again, but he didn't answer. I guessed he was embarrassed, or worse, blaming himself. I knew my son better than anyone. Noah always endured first, stayed silent second, and fell apart last. I'd seen it during his first divorce 6 years ago, and now it was happening again. I paced around the house like a wounded lioness. I opened a kitchen drawer and pulled out a small notebook, the blue one with worn edges. it. I wrote, December 12th, Randall Pierce publicly humiliated Noah in front of the staff, deliberately spilled coffee to make him kneel and clean the floor. I didn't know what made me do it. Maybe instinct, maybe the experience of a single mother who'd seen too much bitterness in life. But deep inside, I knew this wasn't just an incident. It was a warning, a sign that my son was being pulled into something dangerous. And if I didn't document everything, I wouldn't be able to protect. I barely slept that. The scene at the company played over and over in my mind. The laughter, Noah's terrified eyes, Randall's shouting. But the image that haunted me most was Olivia, standing a few feet away, arms crossed, her face cold and blank, pretending she didn't know the man being humiliated in front of her. I once thought Olivia was simply a little spoiled from growing up wealthy. I told myself differences in social status didn't matter if two people loved each other. But now I had to face the truth. Olivia did not love Noah the way a wife should. She loved control. She loved power, especially the power that came from having a husband who depended on her family. I saw it clearly in the way she stood there, arms folded, not moving an inch to defend him. Near dawn, I sat at the dining table and opened the notebook again. I wrote, "No one has the right to turn Noah into a joke. No one. And beneath that, they think Noah will stay silent. They think I'm old, weak, and powerless. They're wrong." I closed the notebook and exhaled slowly. Life had taught me one thing. The people who seem untouchable are often the easiest to topple, as long as you hit them at the right time, in the right way. Randall and his family looked perfect. Money, power, reputation. But I'd lived long enough to know the shinier the surface, the deeper the cracks underneath. I didn't yet know the full truth, but I knew one thing for sure. They were about to face a storm, one I would create myself. I remember clearly the day Noah first brought Olivia home, a day when I sensed something was off but couldn't put it into words. It was mid-autumn in North Carolina. The driveway was covered in golden leaves like a warm welcome mat. Noah called a few hours before, sounding excited like a man in love, even though he was already over 30. I remember the knock on the door. When I opened it, Olivia stood beside Noah, undeniably beautiful, the kind of beauty that comes from growing up wealthy. Golden hair and soft waves, a beige designer coat, elegant heels, and gray-blue eyes so cold they made you step back a little. She smiled, but the smile never reached her eyes. I greeted her warmly, but a faint uneasiness lingered in my chest. The evening went smoothly, too smoothly. Olivia spoke softly, politely, talking about her work, her family, her goals, but I caught the way she looked at Noah sometimes. Analytical, appraising. It bothered me. It was the look of someone examining a project that needed improvement, not a partner she cherished. And Noah, he was trying too hard, too careful with his words, too eager for her approval, too unlike himself. I saw it because I'm his mother. Meeting Randall for the first time happened sooner than I expected. Noah took me to his house, a mansion so large I needed a moment to find the main entrance. Randall greeted me the way a man greets someone he doesn't consider his equal. His handshake was cold, stiff, purely procedural. He looked at my simple cardigan, then at his wife's designer dress. The comparison was obvious. Dinner that night was a string of half-polite, half-patronizing comments. Randall questioned Noah's education, career, income, not to learn, but to highlight Noah's lack. He said Olivia deserved a truly strong man and watched Noah's reaction like it amused him. Noah swallowed hard over and over, trying not to show hurt. I remembered every word. Randall's arrogance wasn't just aimed at me. He looked down on Noah too. I left that house knowing one thing. If Noah married into this family, he would lose himself. And I was right. Months into dating, Olivia began shaping Noah quietly. Not by orders, but by suggestions disguised as care. You should wear suits more. You need to work out so you look confident. You should speak more like business leaders. You have to learn a more professional communication style. Each time Noah tried to comply, he changed the way he talked, the way he dressed, the way he held himself, and he began losing sleep, first occasionally, then constantly. I warned him, told him love wasn't supposed to be an endurance test, but Noah believed the best in people. He believed Olivia loved him. He believed the Pierces just needed time to warm up. I'd lived long enough to know better. Their wedding was extravagant and cold, beautiful like a magazine spread, frozen like marble. I had no part in the decisions. I was simply told where to sit. After the wedding, the Pierces never invited me to dinner, not even once. Noah thought they were busy. I understood the truth. He was theirs now, and I was irrelevant. Then came the financial control, the shared account Olivia managed, the spending restrictions Noah had to discuss with her, and the documents he was pressured to sign for family restructuring. That night, I wrote everything down, every odd detail, every red flag, and I knew something was very wrong. Evil never shows up suddenly. It grows roots, and the roots in the Pierce family were poisonous. What I didn't know then was that Randall was hiding the biggest truth of all. Pierce Manufacturing was on the brink of collapse, and I was about to discover it in a way none of them expected. In Noah's first week, Randall assigned him the worst tasks under the guise of training, moving heavy boxes, pushing carts, running errands on foot between distant buildings. Noah even got injured one afternoon. When I asked if Randall knew, Noah said, "This is how I learn what pressure feels like at the lower levels." A cold shiver ran through me. That's not training, Noah. That's humiliation. But my son only stayed silent. Not long after that, Randall said something to Noah that I will never get. One evening, while Noah was having dinner with the Pierce family, Randall leaned back in his chair, raised his wine glass, and said with absolute certainty, "If you want to be a son-in-law of this family, you need to know your place." I wasn't there, but Noah told me later when he accidentally let it slip. I asked him what that place was. Noah didn't answer. That silence said everything. I could picture Noah sitting there at a dinner table surrounded by wealthy people, listening to Randall say that with a casual, almost bored tone. I knew my son. He's not the type to get angry easily. He would simply lower his head because he never wants to cause trouble. But people like Randall see that kindness and exploit it. At the company, things grew even worse. It wasn't just Randall who looked down on Noah. Other colleagues began treating him like a servant rather than someone being trained for a management position. Noah told me that every time he walked down the hallway, they whispered, "That's Randall, Dor. That's the precious son-in-law. He only got this job because he married the boss's daughter." Even though Noah tried to recount it jokingly, I still heard the hurt hidden inside every word. I once told Noah, "You don't have to tolerate people who look down on you," but he only gave me that faint smile, the kind you use when you're trying not to collapse. What hurt me most was Olivia, the woman Noah trusted, taking her family's side. Every time Noah complained even a little about what Randall did, Olivia would say in that condescending tone, "You need to be stronger. Men should handle pressure. My dad just wants you to grow up." She called those humiliations lessons for becoming a real man. I wanted to ask her, grow up by kneeling on the floor? Grow up by being called useless in front of employees? But Noah didn't want me confronting Olivia. He said I didn't understand their perspective. He was right. I didn't understand how a wife could calmly watch her husband get trampled. Then one winter night, Noah came to my house in a state I will never forget. It was freezing outside, and Noah stood at my doorway with his coat hanging open, smelling strongly of alcohol. I had never seen my son that drunk. When I helped him into a chair, he burst into tears. Tears like a child's. "Mom, I can't take it anymore. I wish I could disappear." I froze. Noah had never said anything like that in his life. I grabbed his hand, feeling how cold his fingertips were. "Noah, look at me." But he didn't. He only shook his head, tears falling onto my hand, hot and desperate. Noah said he always felt inadequate, that every day at the company was another day he feared hearing those mocking comments, feared making a mistake, feared Randall humiliating him again in front of everyone. He said Olivia told him he was too sensitive, that he needed to grow up. I sat beside my son the entire night, listening to him spill out through the haze of alcohol, how every day felt like he was being swallowed whole. After that night, I started watching his life closely. I didn't ask aggressively. I didn't pry. I just observed, the way any mother does when she senses something is deeply wrong. And then, one clue after another began to appear. Noah said Randall often handed him documents he needed to review, but whenever Noah brought them to upper management, they looked confused confused and told him, "You don't have the authority to see these," as if Randall was purposely steering Noah toward dangerous territory. I realized something. Randall didn't want Noah to grow stronger. He wanted Noah to become a liability, a sacrificial lamb. Then one day, Noah said Randall told him to sign off on an inventory report to complete the file, even though Noah didn't work in that department. Noah refused, and Randall shouted right in his face, "You're part of this family. Just sign it." When I heard that, a chill ran down my spine. Randall was steering everything toward one direction. Noah would be the one blamed if the company got into trouble. I wrote in my blue notebook, "Randall is constructing a scapegoat." Every line I wrote made the fear inside me grow heavier. Noah became more and more exhausted. He began working from home on weekends because he was burned out. When I saw his thin face on FaceTime, I saw the unmistakable signs of despair. But Noah still tried to hide everything, still told me everything was fine, still defended Olivia. I knew my son was sliding down a steep hill, one he couldn't stop on his own, and I, the mother who carried him through every storm of his childhood, could no longer stay still. I swore I would not let them make Noah the fall guy for the Pierce family's sins. I had once fought to keep my child alive through poverty. Now I had to fight again, not against hunger, but against the power of those who looked down on him. That night, while Noah slept on my sofa, completely drained, I stood by the kitchen door, watching the snow fall in the yard, and I felt a different kind of cold, the cold of truth taking shape. I had written down enough in my little notebook, enough to know that what Noah suffered wasn't random, enough to know Randall didn't see Noah as a son-in-law. He saw him as a tool. I closed the notebook, resting my hand on the cover as if sealing a vow. I would not let Randall destroy my child. And the very next morning, I decided it was time to uncover the real condition of Pierce Manufacturing and what they were hiding. I started digging into Pierce Manufacturing on a cold afternoon, right after Noah left my house following a dinner he could barely eat before saying he had to go prepare documents for Randall. I watched him walk out the door, shoulders slumped as if carrying the weight of the world. I knew he was almost at his breaking point, and if I didn't act soon, everything would spiral out of control. I didn't know much about big company finance, but I knew I needed someone who could dig into what ordinary people couldn't see. So I called Henry Whitman, an old friend, once a contract attorney in Charlotte. We met years ago when I worked part-time cleaning the law office where he had just started his career. Henry was always direct, discreet, and especially grateful for a small favor I once did for him long ago. When he heard me ask him to investigate Pierce Manufacturing, he stayed silent for a few seconds before saying, "Maggie, are you sure? That's a big corporation, not some small business. I don't care how big it is, I just need to know what they're doing to my son." My voice was calm, but the fury beneath it made Henry stop questioning me. He simply said he would start immediately. A week later, Henry called and asked me to meet him at his office on Sunday afternoon. When I arrived, he was standing near the window, a thick stack of documents on the table. His face was unusually serious enough for me to sense that whatever he was about to say would change everything. "Maggie," he began. I dug deep. And what I found, no one knows about. I sat down, hands clasped together. "Tell me, Henry." He opened the file and pushed it toward me. The pages were filled with numbers that made my head spin, but Henry summarized it in one sentence. Pierce Manufacturing is drowning in debt and covering it up with extremely risky accounting tactics. I stared at him, mind blank. Henry continued, "They're being sued by at least 7 companies for breach of contract. They lost 3 major distribution deals. Part of their supply chain has collapsed. A factory in Tennessee shut down completely. And most importantly, Randall has been manipulating the books to hide more than $14 million in it." It took me a moment to fully grasp what he said. $14 million. Enough to sink a corporation. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "And what does Noah have to do with it?" Henry tightened his grip on his pen. "Randall is setting up a fall guy. And Noah, with his vague job title, unclear authority, authority and being new is the perfect candidate. Felt a sharp pain in my chest. He wants to make my son take the blame? Henry nodded slowly. That's what I believe. If the company gets investigated or collapses, Noah will be portrayed as the incompetent signer, the one who approved things he didn't understand. And Randall, he'll stand behind the curtain, untouched. I couldn't speak for several minutes. It felt like someone was crushing my ribs. I feared Randall treated Noah poorly, but I never imagined he was wicked enough to sacrifice my son's future to save himself. When did Olivia know about this? I asked. Henry looked at me with sympathy. She knew. She knew very well. Maggie, Olivia isn't naive. She moves in her father's wealthy social circles. They talk. She knew the company's financial state long ago. A hollow feeling opened inside my chest. And Noah? I am certain he has no idea. If he knew, he wouldn't be able to function. I shook my head, not to deny it, but to keep from crying. And Olivia still stayed silent, letting Noah carry the risk for them. Henry nodded. They're protecting the family name. If their financial disaster comes out, they need a face. Someone young, inexperienced, unprepared to take the fall. I closed my eyes. Every word Henry said cut like a blade. From beginning to end, Noah wasn't a son-in-law. He was a living shield for a powerful, ruthless family. After that meeting, I went home and sat by the window for a long time. I looked out at the small garden where Noah used to play when he was little, chasing butterflies, laughing loud enough to wake the neighbors. I remembered every moment I'd worked myself to exhaustion to give him the life he deserved. And now, all he received from his wife's family was contempt and a scheme to turn him into their scapegoat. I knew that if I didn't act, Noah would lose everything, his reputation, his future, even the last pieces of his self-worth. I opened my blue notebook and wrote one more line, not just saving Noah, tearing down what dragged him to his knees. In that moment, my anger solidified into something fiercer, a pillar, a vow. I decided to do something no one would expect a 66-year-old woman to do. I began building a shell company. I named it Turner Strategic Holding, something that sounded like a rising investment firm, serious enough and unfamiliar enough to avoid suspicion. I opened a business account, hired an independent accountant, and used my life savings, plus the money from selling an old family house in Virginia, to establish its initial capital. No one knew, not even Noah, and I began to learn. Yes, at 66, I sat in front of a computer taking courses on corporate finance, risk management, and acquisition strategy. I called old friends who once worked in banking. I read about shareholder structure, asset valuation, and negotiation tactics for taking over company. At first, it felt like wandering through a dense forest of unfamiliar terms. But I remembered the years when I worked 3 jobs just to raise Noah. There was nothing I couldn't do once I decided to. I didn't just want to save Noah. I wanted to destroy the thing that made him kneel on that floor. In the following weeks, I gathered more evidence of Randall's misconduct, from Noah's stories, from Henry's documents, from industry rumors Henry heard. The deeper I dug, the clearer the truth became. Randall Pierce wasn't a businessman. He was a panicked man hiding behind reputation, a man willing to sacrifice anyone, even his own son-in-law, to protect his illusion of power. And if I didn't stop him, Noah would be the first casualty. One evening, while I was reviewing Henry's latest notes, he called me. His voice was lower and slower than usual. "Maggie, I need to say something, and you need to listen carefully." I gripped the phone. "Go ahead, Henry." There was a pause. Then he said a sentence that snapped everything into focus. A sentence I will remember for the rest of my life. "Maggie, if you want to save Noah, you have to defeat Randall in the only place he cares about, his company." I froze. Henry continued. "That's his battlefield, and that's the only place he can be brought down." I rested my hand on the blue notebook and stared at my reflection in the glass. I knew, I understood, and I was ready. My fight for Noah began that very moment. If you're listening to this and felt your chest tighten at the thought of a mother watching her child turned into a shield for another's greed, tell me where you're watching from in the comments, or leave even a single line so I know we're walking through this together. From the day Henry said that to save Noah, I had to defeat Randall where he was strongest, I lived with a constant distant wire pulled tight between determination and fear. I kept a calm face around Noah, but every time I saw him, a deep ache bloomed inside me. My son grew thinner by the week, while Olivia grew more unmasked. Noah started coming to my house more often, not to confide, but because he didn't want to stay home with Olivia. Whenever I saw him standing at my doorway, tired and drained, I knew something else had happened. Olivia no longer hid her contempt. She insulted Noah openly, not just at home, but in front of friends and relatives. One evening, Noah told me that during a dinner with their social circle, Olivia said in front of everyone, "Do you know why my dad is disappointed in you? Because you have no ambition. You're nothing like successful men." She finished speaking. A few people scoffed, and Noah stayed quiet as if her words were simply the truth. I asked him what he did at that moment. Noah just shrugged. "I'm used to it, Mom." Those two words sent a chill down my spine. Day by day, I watched Noah being pushed to the bottom of his own self-worth. He no longer looked people in the eye when speaking. His shoulders were always slumped. His eyes constantly searched for faults in himself. I recognized those signs. I had seen them in women who suffered emotional abuse back in the church group years ago. People who are suppressed long enough eventually stop believing they deserve respect. I feared that one day Noah would reach that point too, and then the thing I feared most happened. It was a rainy night. I was reviewing some of Henry's notes when I heard loud, urgent knocking at the door. I opened it and saw Noah standing there, soaked through, breathless, his eyes red like someone had torn his heart out. I pulled him inside immediately. "Noah, what happened?" He was trembling as he removed his wet coat, and for a few seconds I thought he wouldn't be able to speak at all. Then he took a deep breath, his voice cracking. "She kicked me out, Mom." I froze. Olivia had done many cruel things, but kicking her husband out into the cold rain, that was cruelty beyond imagination. "Why?" I asked. Noah let out a bitter laugh. Olivia said, "I'm not qualified to be her husband." It felt like someone grabbed my heart and squeezed hard. Noah sank into the chair, burying his head in his hands. Rainwater dripped from his hair onto the carpet, blending with his tears. "Mom," I tried everything Olivia and her father wanted. I changed myself, I endured, I stayed quiet, but I'm just not enough for them. He looked up. That look, the look of someone worn down to the core, forced me to turn away so I wouldn't cry. I sat beside him and placed my hand on his back, feeling each shaky breath. "Noah, you're not wrong. You're not useless. You're not inadequate. You're just surrounded by people who don't recognize your worth." But Noah only shook his head. "I'm tired, Mom. I don't even recognize myself anymore." When he said that, I knew. This marriage had shattered long ago. Noah just hadn't found the courage to let go. I made him a cup of hot tea and set it in front of him. He held the cup with both hands, as if trying to absorb enough warmth to keep from falling apart completely. I sat beside him without saying anything else. You can't fix someone with a few encouraging words. Sometimes silent presence matters more. When Noah finally calmed down a little, I said, "Noah, it's time for you to leave this toxic marriage." He said nothing. No agreement, no refusal. I knew that hesitation well, born from loyalty, from fear of starting over, from the guilt of thinking he had failed. I held his hand. "Noah, you can't go back to a place that hurts you like this. You've tried harder than anyone, but love is an endless endurance." He looked at me, eyes still red. "I'm scared, Mom." I nodded. Everyone is scared when they leave a place they once called home. But Noah, if you stay, they will destroy you. Then I let the final sentence fall, soft but absolute. "They want to break you, Noah, but I will not let them." Noah lowered his head. New tears fell into his hands. But unlike the tears from the nights before, these were the tears of someone finally letting go of a weight that had crushed him far too long. That night, Noah slept on the old sofa where he used to lie and watch cartoons as a little boy. I tucked a blanket around him, just like when he was small, then walked into the kitchen where my blue notebook lay open on the table. I wrote a line bolder than any line before. "It's time to act." The next morning, I called Henry and said, "It's time time for the next step. Henry didn't ask if I was sure. He just said, Pierce Manufacturing is at its weakest point in history. If you're going to make a move, now is the moment. I had been preparing for this moment for weeks. Every financial lesson, every consultation, every page of notes, all leading to one decision. I submitted a formal offer to acquire Pierce Manufacturing through Turner Strategic Holding. It was an offer to purchase a controlling stake at a low price, but one that reflected the company's collapsing condition, an offer Randall couldn't ignore, but also couldn't accept easily. I sent the documents through legal channels, ensuring my identity stayed hidden. Randall would only see the name of an emerging investment firm, not Maggie Turner, age 66, from Raleigh, North Carolina. My hand trembled when I hit send, but it wasn't fear. It was the feeling of finally standing up after being pushed into a corner for far too long. 3 days later, I received a call from Henry. Maggie, you need to hear this, Henry said quickly. Randall, he's panicking. I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. What did he say? He has no idea who Turner Strategic Holdings is. He thinks it's a competitor who found out his weakness. He's calling every investor he knows, but no one wants to touch a sinking company. I stayed silent as Henry continued. Randall is desperate. You chose the perfect moment. I looked out the window. Winter snow had started to fall, the flakes light but cold, just like the feeling inside me. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't want revenge for myself. I was simply doing what a mother must do, protect her child from hands that wanted to destroy his life. This war was only beginning. After Henry told me Randall was spiraling because of the buyout offer, I knew the final opening had come. A man like Randall, who lived his whole life perched on the top of power, loses all composure when thrown into desperation. I only needed to wait for the moment he lost his footing and strike. And that moment came sooner than I expected. 3 days after the offer was sent, Randall called an emergency meeting at Pierce Manufacturing's headquarters. The news reached me through Henry just hours after Randall made his plea. He's trying to bring in investors at any cost, Henry said over the phone. But Maggie, I'm certain no one wants to touch a company collapsing this fast. I wasn't surprised. The companies that smelled danger had quietly pulled away long ago. The unfinished projects, the mounting debts, the lawsuits hanging over them. All of it made Pierce Manufacturing look like a sinking ship everyone wanted to abandon. Only Randall kept clinging to the wreckage as if it were his own pride. After the meeting, Randall called more than 10 longtime partners. Henry's sources reported 9 rejected him immediately, 2 stalled, and 1 said, Randall, I'm sorry, I can't save a sinking ship. I could imagine him slamming his fist, yelling, pacing through his office with fury. But I didn't care about his emotions, only the timing. This was exactly when he was at his weakest. While Randall scrambled for a lifeline, Henry and I finalized the offer through Turner Strategic Holding. We offered to buy 60% of the shares, enough to take full control, at a price far below what they claimed the company was worth. But it was a price that perfectly reflected the truth, an offer sharp enough to hit Randall's fear, yet realistic enough to leave him with no other option. Henry sent the negotiation packet. Randall replied in less than 2 hours. A single message: we need to meet. That was the moment I knew Randall had lost. When a man of power reaches out to a nameless investor, it means he has run out of moves, but I still kept the strategy. Total silence. I let Henry handle it while I stayed in the shadow. Randall met Henry at a fancy restaurant in Charlotte. I wasn't there, but Henry recounted every detail as if I had been sitting at the next table. Randall, the same man who once made Noah kneel on the floor, showed up looking worn out, disheveled hair, crooked tie, dark circles under his eyes. He opened his laptop, scrolling through slides, trying to convince Henry that the company was just going through temporary difficulties. Henry kept a calm expression, then said only, "We know the real situation. This is our final offer." Randall turned pale, but he signed. Not because he trusted Turner Strategic Holdings, not because he believed he would be rescued. He signed because he had no other choice. A man who built his life on absolute dominance had, for the first time, sold his authority to people he didn't even know. I could imagine the tremor in his hand as he held that pen. What relieved me most was that Noah still had no idea. I didn't want my son to feel like a burden. I didn't want him thinking I fought fought this battle because he was weak. I wanted Noah to stand tall on the day he learned the truth, seeing me not as a rescuer, but as a mother protecting her child from cruelty he never deserved. Noah asked me a few times why I was so busy, why I left the house at unusual hours. I only said I was helping a friend from church organize storage files. He believed me. He believed me because Noah always believes me, and that made me even more determined not to slip. While Randall signed in despair, Olivia, sharp, calculating, born into the world of wealth, began to suspect something. She did not sit still. She dug through documents, checked investment firm directories, even called friends in finance to ask about Turner Strategic Holding. But of course, she found nothing. Turner Strategic Holdings was created precisely to reveal nothing. Henry once joked, "Maggie, you hide your tracks better than the young investors." I knew Olivia was only worried about her family, her father, her family's reputation. Not for a single second did she worry about Noah, the man she had vowed to love for life. Thinking of that brought a mixture of sadness and resolve to my heart. Noah deserved someone who lived for their marriage, not someone who hid the truth to protect her elite lineage. In the midst of all the chaos, I maintained silence. No reaction, no acceleration, no hesitation. A silence that kept the enemy guessing. A silence that made Randall believe he still had room to negotiate. In reality, everything was already set. The transfer contract were signed. Randall's lawyer confirmed the transaction. Henry prepared every legal document to ensure the acquisition proceeded smoothly, cleanly, and without giving Randall any chance to fight back. One rainy afternoon, Henry sent me the thick stack of final paperwork. He said, "It only comes down to one final step now, announcing the new owner." I held the stack of documents, feeling the cold at my fingertips, not from fear, but because I knew that moment would be the moment Randall Pierce lost everything, and I would be the one to witness it. That night, I sat alone in my living room, the desk lamp casting a warm glow over the papers spread out before me. I thought of every tear Noah had shed, every insult he had endured, every night he slept on my sofa after being thrown out of his home. I wasn't looking for victory. I wasn't hungry for some dramatic revenge. I just wanted Randall to understand one thing. He had chosen the wrong person to hurt, and I wanted Noah to stand up again, no longer living in fear. I closed the file. I knew tomorrow would be a day Randall would never forget for the rest of his life. The announcement of the new owner was scheduled for 9 a.m., and at exactly 8:58, I, Margaret Maggie Turner, the 66-year-old mother Randall once dismissed, walked into the conference room. At 8:58 that morning, I entered Pierce Manufacturing's headquarters with the calm of someone who had been preparing for this moment her entire life. Not pride, not personal revenge, but the quiet resolve of a mother doing what was necessary to protect her child. The large conference room on the 14th floor was already packed. Directors, department heads, in-house attorneys, and the entire leadership team sat in formal rows. Every head turned when the door opened. A few unfamiliar faces looked at me with polite curiosity. They had no idea who I was. I liked that. I wanted to walk into their world like an unexpected gust of wind. And then I saw Randall Pierce. He stood at the head of the table, his usual dark blue suit looking wrinkled, his face exhausted, as if he hadn't slept in days. But what struck me most were his eyes, the same eyes that once looked at Noah with contempt, now filled with fear. As I stepped farther into the room, Randall's eyes widened in disbelief, his face drained of color in a single breath. He stammered, voice cracking. What are you doing here?" A ripple of murmurs spread across the room. A few people shot uneasy glances at each other, whispering under their breath. I could feel the tension spreading like tiny waves across still water. I didn't sit down immediately. I stood at the head of the table, placed my handbag on a chair, and took out the thick file Henry had prepared. I set it onto the table with a sharp, echoing thud, louder than any spoken declaration. I looked straight at Randall and said slowly, "I am the new owner of Pierce Industries, Mr. Randall. There are moments in life when the air seems to split in two. This was one of them. The entire room went silent. The chief chief financial officer dropped his pen. Another director's mouth fell open, no sound coming out. The company's in-house attorney froze, turning toward Randall as if asking, is she telling the truth? And Randall? He no longer carried even a shadow of his former authority. He stepped back half a pace, arms slack at his sides, his whole body collapsing inward. Finally, he sank into his chair, completely undone. I could hear his breathing, short, panic. And in that moment, I saw the man who once forced my son to kneel on a dirty floor, now pushed to the edge of his own ruin. Part of me felt the sting of witnessing a man break so completely. But the other part, the part that had watched Noah be crushed day after day, understood this was the price Randall had earned. I continued, my voice calm but firm. You signed the transfer agreement, didn't you? Therefore, today I'm announcing to the entire board, Turner Strategic Holdings, led by me, is the new owner of the company. Again, the room fell into absolute stillness. No one dared breathe too loudly. Randall placed a trembling hand on the table. No, you can't. You don't have this kind of money. You don't have the resources. This can't be real. He choked on his own words. It can't be you. I looked at him, not with triumph, but with a clarity he could no longer deny. You think a mother can't do this? I tilted my head, speaking even more deliberately. You misjudged the wrong person from the very beginning, Randall, and you misjudged my son. A hesitant voice spoke up, the head of human resources. Excuse me, does this mean all current company operations fall under your decision-making now? I nodded. Exactly. A hum of whispers spread across the room. I saw fear, confusion, but also a glimmer of hope in the eyes of those who had suffered under Randall's chaotic leadership. They didn't know who I was, but they understood one thing. Anyone who wasn't Randall was an improvement. Just when the atmosphere was stretched to the breaking point, the conference room doors burst open. Olivia stormed in, her heels striking the marble floor with sharp, angry clicks. Dad, I heard something. She scanned the room, and then her eyes landed on me. For a moment, she looked like she had seen a ghost. Without anyone speaking, she understood. No, can't be you. She stepped forward. You can't be. This company belongs to my family. I turned toward her. Not anymore, Olivia. Her face flushed bright red, her voice rising. Dad, do something. Take the company back. This is Pierce Manufacturing. You can't let some outsider, someone like her. She didn't finish her sentence because Randall shouted, Olivia, stop! It was the first time I'd ever heard him yell at her like that. Olivia froze, trembling with rage. Randall muttered, almost to himself, I signed it. I can't undo it. Everything is legally binding. Olivia whipped back toward me, venom in her eyes. What did you do? What trick did you use? Did you trap my father? I placed both hands on the table, my voice soft but sharp enough to cut through steel. No tricks, no traps, no coercion. Your father signed willingly because he drove this company to the ground and no one else wanted to save it. Olivia clenched her jaw and turned back to her father. Dad, tell me you didn't actually sign. Randall said nothing. He simply slumped deeper into his chair, one hand covering his face, the picture of defeat. When no one could challenge me any longer, I straightened up and opened the official document from Henry. I have a formal announcement. All eyes turned to me. Effective immediately. The entire leadership structure will be reorganized. Some positions will remain, some will change based on merit. I promise no one will lose their job unless tied to financial misconduct. A wave of relief washed through part of the room. Others glanced nervously at Randall. I scanned the room and delivered the final blow. The era of Randall Pierce is over. Randall jerked upright as if stabbed. Olivia's face went ghost white with fury. But it was the truth, and sometimes the truth arrives wearing the face of a simple mother they once underestimated. When everything was said and done, I gathered my documents while the leadership team sat frozen in disbelief. Randall couldn't stand. Olivia stormed out like a storm unleashed. I walked toward the door, then turned and said, "This meeting is adjourned. At 3 this afternoon, I want all department heads present for the restructuring briefing." Everyone nodded instantly. The first time they followed instructions without Randall's voice behind them. I stepped into the hallway, and right then, I pulled out my phone and called the only person who needed to be here on this monumental day. When Noah Noah answered, I spoke slowly. Noah, can you come to Pierce? I need you, but I want to tell you the reason face to face. I left the conference room with steady, deliberate steps, not to flaunt victory, but to let the air settle before the next storm began. I knew Noah's arrival would be the pivotal moment, not just for him, but for the entire Pierce empire. I stood in the hallway watching employees walk by with confused, curious glances. They must have wondered who this older woman in a simple brown knit coat was, and how, in a matter of minutes, everything they knew about their company had changed. I waited about 10 minutes before the elevator opened. Noah stepped out, still the same gentle face, still the same tired eyes, not yet healed from months of emotional strain. But now there was something else, uncertainty mixed with hope. He looked around, searching for me among the stairs. When he spotted me, he hurried over, worry written all over his face. Mom, what's going on? You called me here. Are you okay? I nodded. I'm fine, Noah. I just need you here to hear something important. He squinted, confused. I placed my hand on his shoulder, soft but firm, and said, Son, I am the new owner of this company. Noah froze, completely froze. I watched his lips part, but no sound came out. In a few seconds, his expression shifted from shock to disbelief to utter astonishment. No way. He stepped back. Mom, what are you talking about? How could you? His voice cracked. I smiled gently, shaking my head. You don't need to ask how. You just need to know I did it for you, for everything you endured. Noah lifted a hand to cover his face. I heard his breath hitch, then a soft, uncontrollable sob escape. Mom, you didn't have to do all of this for me. I'm not worth you carrying such a burden. I cupped his face between my hands and made him look straight at me. Noah, listen to me. My voice was low but steady. I didn't do this for revenge. I did it so you would know you deserve respect. You deserve to stand tall, not kneel before anyone. Tears rolled down Noah's cheeks. He pulled me into a tight embrace, as if afraid that letting go would make everything disappear. Thank you, Mom. But are you sure? This is huge. I brushed his hair gently. Noah, nothing is too big when it comes to protecting my child. After giving Noah a few minutes to calm down, I led him into the conference room next door, a smaller, quieter room, just right for a private conversation. When the door closed, I sat down across from him and opened the folder Henry had prepared. Noah, I said, I have an offer for you. He wiped his eyes, trying to steady himself. What kind of offer? I slid the folder toward him. You will become the new CEO of Pierce Industries. Noah looked at me as if I had just said something impossible. Mom, I can't. I'm not capable enough. I don't even know how they run half the departments here. I raised a hand, signaling him to stop. You are not adult. You don't need to know everything on day one. I leaned back in my chair. But you have something Randall never had. Kindness, humility, and a sincere desire to do what's right for this company. Noah lowered his head, his voice trembling. Mom, I lost my confidence. I don't believe in myself anymore. I smiled gently and touched his hand. That's okay. I believe in you. And sometimes having just one person believe is enough. Noah kept his eyes closed for a long moment, then exhaled slowly. Mom, I'll try. I can't promise I'll be perfect, but I will try. I nodded, feeling half of the weight in my chest lift. When Noah and I stepped into the hallway, many employees were already gathered. They had heard the news from the earlier meeting and were waiting to see what would happen next. And something unexpected occurred. When Noah walked beside me, the entire hallway fell silent. No mocking laughter like before. No snide whispers the way it used to be when Randall ordered him around. They looked at Noah differently, with curiosity, with uncertainty, and with a dawning realization that the person who once stood at the bottom might now be someone they needed to pay attention to. I heard a few murmurs. Is it really him? Noah. No way. I glanced at Noah and smiled. Come on, son. It's time for you to meet everyone. Back in the large conference room, Randall was still sitting there. His face was ashen, as if he had aged 10 years in a single morning. When Noah walked in behind me, Randall shot up from his chair. Noah, don't listen to her. You don't understand what's happening. She tricked. I cut him off. Randall, you do not have the right to speak to the new CEO CEO in that tone. The room seemed to tilt for a moment. New CEO? Randall repeated, his eyes empty. I nodded. Yes, Noah Turner is the new CEO of Pierce Manufacturing. Randall staggered as if someone had punched him straight in the chest. No, impossible. He has no experience. He's just, I held his gaze. He is far more capable than you ever allowed him to be, and he certainly deserves better treatment than what you gave him. No one said a word. The room was utterly silent. I turned to the in-house attorney and the leadership team. Starting today, Randall Pierce will hold the position of strategic advisor, unpaid, with no signing authority and no involvement in company operation. The sentence fell like a verdict. Randall collapsed back into his chair. He had nothing left to say, and then Olivia arrived. She stood in the doorway, her face flushed red, her eyes swollen with rage. The moment she saw Noah standing beside me, she rushed forward, her anger exploding. Noah, are you out of your mind? You're letting your mother destroy my family? You're taking her side? Noah stepped back, but his voice was calmer than I expected. Olivia, don't talk about my mother like that. She let out a sharp, poisonous laugh. And who do you think you are? A failure whose mommy bought him a CEO title. You think anyone will respect you? Noah didn't move. For the first time in months, my son's eyes held no fear. Olivia, he said slowly. The room gasped. Olivia's mouth fell open, no words coming out. Right here, right now, Noah continued. I want everything to end. I won't stay in a marriage where I'm nothing but a tool. Olivia dropped onto a chair, her eyes wide with shock and fury. I looked at Noah, standing tall, voice steady, and I knew my son was finally coming back to himself. When the meeting ended, Randall was escorted out in silence. Olivia was helped away by a family member, and Noah and I remained in that sunlit room. Noah looked around, then at me. Mom, everything really has changed. I took his hand and squeezed it gently. Yes, Noah, a new era begins today. And deep inside, I knew this was the first day my son entered his life with a new posture. Not kneeling, but standing tall, as someone worthy of respect. In the days after Noah officially became the new CEO of Pierce Industries, everything moved like a whirlwind that reassured me I had made the right decision. Still, I never imagined the fall of the Pierce family would happen so swiftly, as if their entire empire had been held up by nothing but arrogance instead of any real foundation. The first thing Olivia did after that chaotic meeting was sue Noah. She hired an attorney, filed claims demanding marital assets, compensation for emotional damage, and a share of company equity Noah never even possessed when they married. Olivia showed up to court in an elegant dress, her blonde hair perfectly styled, trying to portray herself as the victim of a deceitful marriage. But she forgot one thing. Olivia was the one who forced Noah to sign a prenuptial agreement, a prenup drafted by the Pierce family's attorney, stating clearly that in the event of a divorce, Olivia could not claim any of Noah's assets, not even those acquired during the marriage. Henry told me what happened during the hearing. When the judge asked Olivia whether she recognized her signature at the bottom of the prenup, she froze for a moment before her face drained of color. Just one sentence. The court denies your request for asset division. And Olivia lost completely. She walked out of the courthouse with red-rimmed eyes, her face twisted with fury, while Noah stood beside Henry with a strange calm, perhaps because, for the first time, he felt the law protecting him. Meanwhile, Randall didn't fare any better. After I took over and released certain internal documents, investigators began noticing irregularities he had tried to hide. Not revenge, just cleaning up the financial system so the company wouldn't collapse. But that also meant Randall Pierce finally had to face the financial misconduct he had committed. Every week brought a new inquiry. The reputation he once built with lavish parties and boastful speeches was now nothing but an empty shell. A major business paper even published an article titled "The Randall Pierce Empire Collapse from Within." I took no pleasure in it. It was simply the inevitable result of a man who valued his ego more than integrity. Olivia didn't escape consequences either. Charlotte's business community is small and word spreads fast. Everyone knew how she treated Noah, knew about her absurd lawsuit, and knew how she helped cover for her father. People who once showcased her as the golden daughter of wealth now avoided her like fire. A conference that had scheduled her as a keynote speaker removed her name overnight, a fashion brand froze all future collaborations. She had once stood in the spotlight, but that same spotlight exposed everything when the applause stopped. Olivia began avoiding public appearances, and then, one quiet morning, she left the city with a few expensive suitcases, leaving behind a reputation built on arrogance and money. While the Pierce family fell apart, the company, now renamed Turner Industries, stepped into a period of renewal. I didn't buy the company just for Noah. I wanted to build a workplace where Noah could be himself, kind, fair, and respectful. The first thing we did was restructure the compensation system. Everything transparent. No more special allowance for Pierce relatives. We improved the work environment too. A cleaner cafeteria, upgraded restrooms, more comfortable office spaces. Small details, but they changed the atmosphere instantly. And I created an employee support fund, something Randall would never have considered. The most touching part came weeks later, when employees who had been bullied under Randall began visiting my office. Some said, "Thank you, I was about to quit last year." Another even cried, "I never thought this company could feel compassionate." Those words reminded me that my battle wasn't just for Noah. It was for the quiet people who had suffered under a tyrant. But what warmed me the most came from Noah. One late afternoon, I walked past his office and saw him smiling, a real smile. The first real smile I'd seen in years. His eyes were brighter, his voice steadier, his posture straight. My son was standing tall again. That night when he left the office, I asked, "Did you have a good day, Noah?" He smiled softly, a simple smile that warmed my heart. "Yes, Mom. I haven't felt this like myself in years." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "You deserve it." A week later, Randall sent me a letter. I didn't open it right away. I set the white envelope on my desk, feeling no anger, no triumph, just peace. When I finally opened the letter, I saw just a few lines. "Maggie, I'm sorry for everything. I was wrong. Wrong to Noah, wrong to the company, wrong to myself." I read all of it. A long letter filled with regret, then folded it back up. I didn't reply. Not because I hated it, but because some apologies exist only to ease the weight on the one who speaks, not to heal the one who hears. And I was no longer responsible for easing Randall's conscience. A few months later, Olivia left Charlotte quietly. No goodbyes, no farewell dinner. She left behind only a handful of old friends, the same people who had quickly turned their backs on her the moment she stumbled. I heard the news through a contact in the industry. Olivia had moved to another state, away from all attention. A sad ending for a woman who once believed the whole world would forever bow at her feet. And Noah, at a local community meeting about a volunteer art project, he met a woman a few years younger. Her name was Emily Hart, a gentle and empathetic art teacher. I saw the way Noah spoke to her. No tension, no fear, no need to earn approval, just a soft, genuine smile. As they stood together, I saw something I had been waiting for a very long time. Hope, not for the company, not for reputation, but for my son's life. The months that followed moved at an entirely different rhythm. If once Noah went to work with dread on his shoulder, now each morning seemed like a fresh start, clearer, lighter, and full of meaning. I watched that change with all the pride a mother could feel. Noah walked into the office with a confidence I hadn't seen since he was little. Not loud or arrogant, but calm, steady, the kind of confidence that comes from finally knowing your worth. Employees greeted him with respect, not the kind of flattery people show to power, but genuine respect for someone who truly listened, understood, and stood up for them. I heard many say that since Noah took over as CEO, the company felt entirely different. Meetings weren't chaotic anymore. Ideas that were once dismissed under Randall were now considered. A longtime employee told me during the quarterly review, "Mr. Noah makes us feel like we matter. It's been a long time since I came to work without that heavy feeling." I smiled when I heard that, because I knew kindness heals far more deeply than dominance ever could. The restructuring, guided by me and Henry, combined with Noah's natural leadership, slowly pulled the company back from the edge. Old debts were paid, new contracts were signed, and most importantly, employee morale skyrocketed. I remember the morning Noah walked into my living room holding the financial report. His eyes sparkled like a child who just got a perfect grade. "Mom, we made a profit this this quarter. I laughed, cupped his face in my hands. Noah, you did it. He shook his head gently. Not me, us. I didn't argue. Even if he said that, I knew it was Noah who stood at the front, who changed how Pierce, now Turner Industries, operated, who cleaned up the mess Randall left behind. My son, the same boy who once knelt to wipe coffee off the floor for his father-in-law, was now standing before an entire board of directors with steady shoulders. And me. For the first time in years, I could finally live a little for myself. I replanted the garden behind my house, the one I had neglected during all those months of supporting Noah. I bought a few pots of lavender for the porch, and every morning I sat outside with a book, soaking in the soft early sun. In the afternoons, I rocked gently on the swing beneath the maple tree. I realized I had walked through a lifetime of storms, but I had never been broken, and now I could finally breathe slowly, gently, peacefully. People started calling me Powerhouse Maggie or the woman who brought Randall down, but I always laughed and shook my head. I was just a mother who did what she had to do to protect her child. Then one day, Noah invited me to dinner at a small restaurant downtown. He said someone wanted to meet me. I went curious, though trying to keep my usual calm. When I walked in, I saw Emily, the woman Noah had mentioned a few times, with her gentle eyes and a warm, honey-colored smile. "Mom, this is Emily," Noah introduced, his voice a little shaky. Emily stood, reached out and took my hand, soft, sincerely. "It's such a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Turner. Noah talks about you often." I looked into her eyes. Something in them reassured me instantly. The purity of a heart without calculation, so different from Olivia. Emily wasn't trying to impress me. She was just being herself, and that simplicity made me feel at ease. The dinner was simple: salad, warm soup, grilled salmon, but it was one of the gentlest meals I had shared in years. I watched how Emily spoke to Noah, kind, respectful, never demanding. Noah listened, smiling, sometimes leaning toward her as if warmed from within. When Emily stepped outside to take a call, Noah leaned toward me. "What do you think of her, Mom?" I placed my hand over his, squeezed gently. "Noah, I've never seen anyone look at you the way she does, without judgment, without expectations, just love." Noah bowed his head, a quiet smile forming. "I think so too." As for Randall, he tried many times to reach Noah, emails, letters, requests to meet as father and son, but Noah wasn't interested, not out of hatred. He was simply exhausted, and because some doors once closed never reopen, not out of cruelty, but because the person who walked through them no longer belongs to the darkness behind them. One day Noah told me, "Mom, I don't want to go back to the old life. I don't want to hear excuses anymore. I just want peace and to be who I really am." I nodded. That decision didn't punish anyone. It saved him. During the company's anniversary celebration, the first one under the new name Turner Industries, the organizers unexpectedly invited me on stage to speak. I was startled. I had always preferred staying behind the scenes, but when the lights shone on me and I looked down at the crowd, employees who had survived chaos and witnessed rebirth, something inside me softened. The host introduced me with a sentence that stilled my heart. "Please welcome the woman who changed the fate of an entire corporation." I stepped onto the small wooden podium. I didn't say much, only what I truly believed. I didn't change anyone's fate. I just stood up at a moment when I knew that if I didn't, the person I loved most would be crushed. And I believe any mother here would have done exactly what I did. Below, many people nodded. Some even wiped their eyes. I didn't need recognition. Seeing them smile, that was the greatest honor. The biggest change arrived on an early autumn afternoon. Soft sunlight, gentle breeze touching the maple leaves behind the building. Noah brought Emily to meet me in the small garden near the administrative wing. "Mom, I have something to tell you," he said, nervous in the way someone gets when they're about to step into a new life. I looked at him, already sensing something in his eye. Then Noah took out a small box and opened it. Inside was a simple, elegant silver ring. He inhaled deeply and said with steady clarity, "Mom, I want to propose to Emily, and I wanted you to be the first person to know." Emotion filled my chest. Warmth, gratitude, relief, all at once. I hugged him and whispered, "Noah, you've found your light." Emily stood beside him, eyes glistening, and I simply smiled. In that moment, I understood that everything I had done, every pain, every battle, every confrontation, had finally brought my son son exactly where he belonged. A healthy life, a kind love, a future he truly deserves. The day Noah and Emily, or rather Elise Emily Hart as I learned from the wedding invitation, held their ceremony, the sky felt as if it was blessing them. The wedding was held at a small ranch outside Charlotte, with a wide green lawn and strings of warm yellow lights hanging like stars at dusk. Noah had said he didn't want a grand wedding. He wanted something intimate, where people could hear each other's laughter without being drowned out by loud music. It was soft, simple, yet warmer than any lavish party Olivia ever boasted about. As guests arrived, I stood in the front row by the flower-lined aisle. I wore a navy dress holding a small bouquet Elise had prepared for me. "I want Mom Maggie to look beautiful today," she had said. I chuckled, but in my heart, something tightened. Maybe because I had spent so many years fearing Noah would never find someone who truly loved him. But today, in that golden glow, I knew he had. The music began. Everyone fell silent. Noah walked out first, not in the expensive suit Olivia once forced on him, but in a simple light gray suit. His face glowed. His eyes held a whole horizon. Then Elise appeared, a soft white dress, simple, flowing, her hair half tied with tiny flower, her eyes fixed on Noah, and only Noah. I heard the guests whisper, "Beautiful together. That look, that's real love." But I barely heard them. My chest had already tightened with joy. When Elise reached him and they joined hands, the officiant smiled and began the vows. But when Noah spoke, his voice trembled. "Elise, you came into my life when I thought I had lost everything. You showed me what peace feels like. You look at me with an expression I never knew, no demands, no judgment, only love." Elise's eyes shimmered with tears, and I cried too. When it was Elise's turn, her voice was soft as a breeze. "Noah, you are the kindest man I've ever met. I didn't love you because of your title or your circumstances, but because of your heart, a heart that has never stopped wanting to do what's right." Those words soothed every wound Noah had ever carried. After the ceremony, the reception took place on the lawn. The sun slipped down and the warm lights above us glowed like a net of tiny stars. People laughed, clinked glasses, and swayed to gentle music. Then came Noah's speech. He stepped onto the small platform, holding a glass, eyes fixed on me. I froze for a moment, but he smiled, calming my heart instantly. "Mom," Noah began, voice deep and full of feeling, "if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be standing here today. There was a time I believed I had no worth, no future. But you saw what I had lost in myself. You stood up and fought for me when I couldn't stand up for myself." He placed his hand over his chest, as if steadying his own heart. "When you saved me, you didn't just save my life. You gave me a new one. I couldn't hold back anymore." Tears streamed down my face. The people sitting near me handed me tissues, and all I could do was smile through the tears. My son, the boy who once cried in my arms after being humiliated, was now standing before everyone, speaking with strength and gratitude. Nothing could make a mother happy. But then I saw a familiar figure beyond the fence. A man stood at a distance, hand resting on the wooden rail, eyes fixed on the ceremony. No one else noticed him, only me, Randall Pierce. He didn't step inside. He didn't interrupt the wedding. He didn't hide in the shadows. He stood there quietly, his face looking much older than the last time I'd seen him. His eyes carried a sadness he couldn't mask. The sadness of a man who had lost everything. His reputation, his power, and worst of all, the son-in-law who once called him father. For a moment, our eyes met across the yard. Just a moment. I didn't nod. I didn't turn away. I didn't sneer. I simply looked at him calmly, without hatred, without resentment, just letting go. And I knew that was the right ending for both me and Randall. The ceremony continued, full of laughter. Elise took my hand and said, "I know Noah is as strong as he is because of you. Thank you for protecting him, for bringing him back." I smiled. "No, it was him. I only nudged him at the right time." Elise shook her head and held my hand tighter. "No one can lift someone who's fallen to the bottom unless they're a mother." I almost cried again, but instead I squeezed her hand gently, letting it be my thanks thank you. When the reception ended, Noah and Elise walked over to me under the warm string light. "We want you to move in with us," Elise said. "We want to take care of you as you get older." I laughed, half teasing, half touched. "I'm not old yet, but I'll think about it." The truth was, I had been thinking about it for weeks because I knew my age was heading toward the years when care would matter, and because I knew those two didn't see me as a burden, but as family they wanted to protect. A few weeks later, I began writing this entire story, not to boast about being clever or strong, but to speak to other mothers silently enduring injustice. I wrote with the heart of someone who had known loss, disrespect, and being cornered, yet stood back up because of love for her son. On every page, I repeated one thing: I didn't do this for revenge. I did it to restore fairness. Any mother on this earth, whether in North Carolina or anywhere else, would understand that. A mother's love isn't noise. It isn't threats or anger. It is steady, patient, quiet at times, but strong enough to change a destiny. And when I placed the final period on my story, the image in my mind wasn't of battles won, or Randall collapsing, or Olivia leaving. It was the moment Noah took Elise's hand and slid the ring onto her finger beneath the golden light. I knew my son's future was safe. I knew my family had healed. I closed my eyes and took a long breath. A long journey had ended, and a new life was opening. Not just for Noah, but for me. A feeling complete, light, and peaceful. When everything began to settle, when Noah and Elise had stepped into their new life together, I found myself forming a habit, reflecting on all of it in the quiet late afternoons when the last sunlight spilled through the window and lit up the pages of my notebook on the table. Sometimes I stopped for a long time, rereading the shaky lines I'd written during the darkest moments. Sometimes I wondered, how did I make it here? I remembered the exact moment it all began, the day I stood at the door of the conference room and saw Noah kneeling on the floor, wiping coffee with his bare hands, his face burning with humiliation. In that moment, my chest felt crushed. No mother is born to watch her child be degraded like that. But if someone asked me which moment changed me, it wasn't when I saw him being mistreated. It was the moment I turned and walked away. The moment I understood that if I reacted then, Randall would destroy my son in ways far worse. The moment I knew I had to choose my battlefield. And from that moment, a long journey unfolded. I looked back on everything. Those sleepless nights filled with anger and heartbreak for Noah. The times I silently observed, waited, collected small clues that later became the foundation of the biggest strike of my life. I remembered every call with Henry, every trembling signature on the papers creating the shell company. Every morning I sat in my living room teaching myself finance so I wouldn't become prey in a world full of traps. I remembered the feeling of walking into that conference room, Randall frozen in place at the sight of me, my hands slightly shaking as I set the file on the table while trying to appear calm. And I remembered even more clearly Noah's face when he heard me say, "I am the new owner of Pierce." From a man humiliated and belittled, Noah rose to become CEO, not because of privilege, but because of the kind heart he had always carried. And watching him return to himself, standing tall again, was the greatest reward of my life. I realized every pain, every setback was just a stepping stone toward a strength I didn't know I possessed. I was not extraordinary. I was not the strongest. I was simply a mother who could not sit still while her son was being destroyed by arrogance and greed. There was nothing extraordinary about what I did. There was only love, sometimes quiet, sometimes fierce, but always steadfast. And that is my legacy. Not the company I bought, not defeating Randall, not becoming a symbol, as many at Turner Industries called me, but giving Noah back the future he deserved, helping him see his own worth, helping him leave a toxic marriage and find a kinder love. If life has any meaning for me, it is that. I hope my story, a story of an ordinary mother refusing to bow to injustice, reminds whoever is listening, your dignity, your self-respect, your future must never be bartered bargained away. If someone is stepping on you to lift themselves higher, remember you are stronger than you think. You deserve more than what life sometimes shows you. And if you've ever been belittled, pushed into a corner, please believe there are new doors waiting for you to open. I say this not as someone who won, but as someone who once trembled, once felt fear, once sat alone at night thinking she wasn't strong enough to go on. But I did, and if I could, you can too. Now, as I write these last lines, Noah and Elise are in the kitchen preparing dinner. I hear their laughter, the clink of glasses, the soft shuffle of their step. The house is full of warmth. I know I no longer need to worry. The future is steady. My son is happy, and my heart is at peace. Thank you who are listening for walking with me through this long journey of tears, hurt, hope, and rebirth. If you're still here, it means my story touched a part of your heart, and that means more to me than you know. Where in the world are you listening from? I truly want to know. Every comment, even a single line, makes me feel like I didn't tell this story alone. Please leave a comment, share your thoughts. I promise I'll read every word. And if stories of justice, love, resilience, and the strength of age bring you comfort, hit subscribe and like the video so we can meet again on another journey, where I continue telling stories of people who seem fragile but carry storms within them. Thank you for being here, for staying, for listening to a mother's heart. To me, your presence is a greater gift than any victory.